Thank you, Deborah, and David, and Alan, and Shoshana, right?
Yes.
So I am so glad you invited me and that ASMP actually brought us together this time. So just a brief note, like, where did I come from? I'm not from the dance world. I wasn't a dancer. I studied anthropology. I wanted to be an ethnographic filmmaker. Then I decided to be a photojournalist. And I was assigned to photograph dance concerts in Boston. And I had no idea really how to do this or anything. It was part of my general news beat. But this is one of the first pictures I ever took. So we're going to get a lot better as we go. But I bring it up because I just call this section the passage of time. And I realize, often you realize things years after you do something, why you were intrigued by it, what it meant to you. And I realized that one of the reasons I was drawn to dance photography, besides its obvious visual and graphic appeal, was the fact that the dancers actually embodied the passage of time. And time is obviously a preoccupation for all photographers because we are capturing moments of various thickness or thinness, with our cameras or other devices. So I realized, looking at this picture, which was taken in the mid-'70s, on a stage, it's very grainy and all that, I loved the shape of the fabric. So I loved the graphic part of it. But I also realized that the trajectory of the fabric told me where the dancer's arm had been. So effectively, this probably 250th of a second showed me the entire path of movement, and it was a picture of time. That's what I'm trying to say, that in a way the dancer could illustrate the passage of time, and that really intrigued me. So again, I'm just going to theaters with my 35mm cameras, and I started to I did this for about 10 years, which was a great education in dance because I didn't really have that. And but I got very frustrated because I was documenting someone else's art form. Now, not everyone sees it this way, but if there's a piece of choreography and it's performed on the stage, I do have the choice of movements and composition and all moments to shoot, but it's basically someone else's work. And I was entering, as a dance photographer, I was entering this world not to celebrate dance and to show choreography, but to do something interesting with photography and dance. I didn't know where I was going to go with it, but I knew I wanted to make a hybrid of dance and photography, producing images that really can only exist as a photograph. They're not images you can see on stage with your unaided vision. So this shot, which is actually a combination of a strobe and a time exposure, became the beginning of experimentation I did as to how I could expand the time base of a photo and how I could have a photograph transcend actually the split second that I was shooting. So this shot of a dancer juggling fire is an example of continuous time. I mean, this is exactly what the eye saw had you been there. And I found that not that interesting. But experimenting with different shutter speeds, this was perhaps a quarter of a second, I realized the photograph could transform the entire time base and make something absolutely impossible to see in the natural world in a photograph. So this was, and then I'm jumping now ahead to where I ended up, which we all know, which is in the stop action split second moment, which also is actually beneath the threshold of human perception because it's taken at a 2,000th of a second and our eyes can't register that, but it's stopping it in the opposite way. So I became fascinated by that, and for the rest of, for all these years, that's what I've been pursuing in one way or another. Time is something we really can't see. We can see it in nature with sunsets. We know that time, as the sun sets or the moon rises, we experience time. But without those clues, it just passes. So getting back to Bernini, the other relationship of my photography with sculpture, besides the fact that I feel that they become like sculptures up in the air, is that when you see a painting, you really have a proscenium perspective on it. You look at it however it's hung in the museum or gallery. But a sculpture invites you to walk around it and see it from different perspectives. Bernini also, actually, I read that when he was placing his sculptures in the Borghese Gallery, would place them to be lit by certain window light, which is what the photographers are doing by developing the lighting that's going to show off the forms the best. This is an example, this was on the cover of my second book, Breaking Airborne, of the difference, the many ways you can photograph this crazy, whatever, the way you can photograph movements. So what's happening in this picture is the dancers, of course, and it looks like infinity because it's a white background. It looks like they're just being shot out of a cannon, which I never tried. But the reality is they're going up and then they're on an angle before they go horizontal and they land. And it's, and if I shoot, and I shot as an experiment this moment from the side, and you get a completely different image of it. So, I mean, people think, you know, the dancers come and they perform something and then you caught this great moment, but for me it was always more interesting to experiment with them and to see what new imagery we could come up with, rather than just take what's in front of me. And this one, actually the person who, William Ewing, who did the text and curation of my 3 books, said, "Lois, I didn't realize you do still lifes." And I said, "Still lifes? I never do a still life. If it's not moving, I don't want to shoot it." And so he said, "Well, what is this all about?" So I found a dancer in, how I get my models, they could walk in, they could be recommended, I could see a picture of them. It's just a spurious enterprise. But there was something about him that I liked. I never saw him dance. I had no idea what he did, but I liked his feeling. So I said, "Why don't you come in and let's, try to collaborate on some photos." So he said, I have an 800-pound jute sculpture that I made in college. Would you mind if I bring it? And I said, no, that's great. So he brought it, he brought part of it, and it's like, well, what the hell are we going to do with this now? And my answer to everything is to jump. The reason why he looks so relaxed is because I shot the moment when he's coming down. Now that I mention this, when you look at all the other pictures, you'll probably notice most of them are not shot at the alleged peak moment when everything is in perfect harmony and shape and form. That's such a static moment to me that I'm not at all interested in shooting it. And it's also, So what I do is I usually shoot either a little bit before they reach that alleged peak or a little bit after. So if the dancer or anyone is coming down, they look relaxed. If they're going up, they have a little more effort and they look like they're striving. But at least there's some narrative that's going on and some feeling that's almost always absent from this peak moment that everyone is usually looking for. So the clue to why he's, if someone said, if I asked you, well, is he going up or is he going down or what? And the clue is that the rope is going up, which means he's going down. And just the way the hair goes up when the body goes down in a picture. And the gentle expression on his face is a function of him, as well as the fact that it's a moment of relaxation. And those are the moments that I really prefer taking. Invisible forces. So a lot of people photograph dancers with tremendous, bulging muscles and sweat and strain and force and power, and they're like Herculean creatures. And I find, looking backwards again, retrospectively, that I never ask that of the dancer, that I almost want them to seem heroic by virtue of the fact that they don't have to expend any energy to be floating in the air or flying or diving or whatever they're doing. They do it with such ease. And that's intensified by the white background. There's technically a white background, which is a photographer's stock and trade background, which I used only to differentiate my photos from pictures taken on a stage. Because if it's taken on a stage, you've got a black background and stage light. But if I bring dancers to a studio on a white background, it's definitely not a stage shot, which I didn't want it to look like. But I realized, looking at a lot of the white background photos, that instead of being just like a white background, the background functioned as an invisible force that had a dramatic impact on the dancers. Another theme that I really like is the ambiguous moment. And again, that's a moniker I put on after the fact. I mean, I really do like to present the mystery of the event. They're moments that happen, they're documents, but you look at them, you can't quite figure it out. And I like that. I don't really want anyone to figure it out. It's just being present with the mystery of what's happening, knowing that it actually happened and it's not some surreal or Photoshop collage. So now that I've told you how to tell if he's going up or coming down, what's he doing? He's going down. And then what happens when he hits the floor? He gets a bump on his back that he complains about, but art is worth it. Oh, this was the one I was just referring to, where this was one of the few times I actually wanted, where I walked into the studio with an idea, in that I was thinking about an hourglass, and I wanted a dancer to look as though the viewer were imagining his form in this sand being poured, and that the next second after that he would just be a pile, on the floor. So we did this hundreds of times, and he's the same fellow, the Misham Mosher, that was in the ropes. And he actually wasn't a dancer, he was a site-specific artist. And so he didn't have all the moves that the traditional dancer has. But when he did this, I liked it, and he had to unfortunately repeat this so many times. And of all the ones I shot, and that's what I think we all love about photography, there's one moment that's the miracle moment, where just the curl in the back of his head, or the amount of density in his face, or the flour dripping off his fingers. It's just moments that never come back and are totally unique. Okay, well, so now this is just going to be a quiet preview of some of the show. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.